It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Good afternoon, Cougar Nation. Welcome on into Greenville, North Carolina, side of BYU versus East Carolina tonight. You can listen to the game right here on KSL News Radio. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland with you. Big BYU football game day today. It's been a long bye week. BYU had a bye last week, back in action after 2 weeks away from action. But this is going to be a big game today, Kyle, between the Cougars and the Pirates.
Feels like we haven't seen Cougar football in a while, Mitch. I am ready to see these guys kick it off here in North Carolina. Beautiful country. Never been out to North Carolina before. I don't think you have as well. And it's been fun to be in Greenville and the surrounding areas the last 2 days, getting a feel of the land. And, Pirate Nation has been super accommodating, and the hospitality has been awesome. And I'm ready for tonight. It's really good weather out here today, and I'm ready for some Cougar football.
Big game today for BYU and in East Carolina. In so many different ways, it's a big game. For BYU, they're looking to complete another perfect non-conference portion of the schedule. For East Carolina, this is a huge opportunity for the Pirates to host a Power 4 team. It's a painted gold, environment. We were, here on campus in the area. We saw the historic Sup Dogs. I mean, it is a busy town. They're expecting a huge crowd tonight. They're going to have fireworks. They're going to have a flyover. They're rolling out all the stops. It's a big-time game, and let's dive into this matchup a little bit more in the starting lineup.
The starting lineup. A look at the stories making headlines right now. It's time for the starting lineup on Cougar Sports Saturday.
BYU comes into the game 2-0. East Carolina 2-1. Pirates last week, big win over a regional rival in Coastal Carolina, 38-0. BYU, of course, had the bye week, fresh off a win over Stanford 2 weeks ago, 27-3. What's kind of your initial impressions, Kyle? We're about, about 5.5 hours away until kickoff. What are your thoughts on this matchup as we inch closer to kickoff tonight?
Yeah, I think these two teams, the way that they've had success so far throughout the first few weeks of the season are a little different, right? BYU's found a lot of success on the ground, and less so for East Carolina. They've had a lot of success in the passing game, and I think that BYU's ability to be able to contain East Carolina as far as BYU's cornerbacks and secondary, being able to limit the amount of total yards that they have through the air is really going to be what I'm looking for from BYU's defense tonight. And then on the other side of things, how well is BYU able to run the football against this ECU defense and this front seven that's had some success stopping their opponents being able to run the ball throughout the first 3 games there for East Carolina. So those are the two things that I'm looking for as matchups are concerned, but also just the environment, being able to be here on the road for the first time this season with BYU trotting out Bear Bachmeier, freshman quarterback, his first road trip of his career, seeing how he performs in front of what we expect to be a pretty hostile crowd.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good test for this BYU football team. I remember talking with former BYU athletic director Tom Holmoe at Big 12 meetings a couple years ago, and when I got on the topic of the 2025 non-conference schedule, I asked him about this game because it was a little bit of a polarizing view. Was BYU actually going to go 2 time zones and play at East Carolina? And Tom was like, we are not canceling this game. We are keeping this game. And Tom was always big on relationships. If someone was going to come to Provo, they were going to return the favor no matter what. Because this is the second game of a 2-game series in the 2022 season where East Carolina had a walk-off field goal victory against BYU in Provo. This closes out the series. And so BYU has made this trip. They've had some success in Eastern time zone games under Kalani Sitake. They're 7-7 since Kalani took over in 2016. And I just think that BYU, I'm really curious to see what maybe new wrinkles they throw at East Carolina. It was very conservative play calling the first 2 weeks offensively, particularly through the passing game with Bear Bachmeier. Does Aaron Roderick, after a week of taking the bye, having more time to prepare for this game, do they open things up a little bit more? Because you think about it, those first 15 to 20 plays are going to be scripted. How much of that is actually going to be taking shots downfield with Bear Bachmeier? I think they do have to establish the ground attack. East Carolina is 7th nationally in rush defense. BYU at the top as well. These are two excellent rush defense teams. I'm curious, though, how much of a role does the passing game play in this matchup? Because, like you said, I think the crowd is going to be very energetic. But how does Bear settle in? And, because he's been very poised and collected these first 2 weeks where he's mature beyond his years, does that carry over on the road where the environment isn't in his favor?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And to kind of piggyback off of that, we heard Chase Roberts talk about that relationship and being able to build off that. 2 weeks ago, he said that, he wanted to take advantage of the bye week to be able to build that chemistry. And we've seen, JoJo Phillips go down. That wide receiver room's a little bit thin and different than it was at the beginning start of the season. And so being able to, have some chemistry be built throughout the last 2 weeks, I hope to see them utilize that a little bit more in this East Carolina game.
BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick had this to say about preparing Bear Bachmeier for his first career road start.
Well, we've been practicing that for road games all through fall camp, so the crowd noise out here is deafening. It can't be louder. It can't be louder anywhere than the crowd noise we have out here on the field, and we've been doing that since fall camp. So we've been practicing for that, and but that was not only for this game, but just for the whole Big 12 season. Then you're just trying to just keep developing and just keep each week just keep taking steps forward, similar to what we did with Jake last year and Jaron the year before that, and Keaton and on and on. You start out the season kind of feeling out what kind of team you have, and then as the season builds, you open it up more as you find out who your best players are and what your best plays are, and we're still in that process right now.
It was funny. He talked about the loud music being played at practice. I pulled up on Tuesday to the practice, and I was in that northwest corner of the parking lot, and I was right there on the fence line, and I could hear the music piped in. Obviously can't see practice. It was all blocked off, of course, but you could hear the music. It was really loud. BYU was trying to simulate a highly energized crowd, what they're expecting here for this one. So, but it was just funny how he's like, it was deafening. And I'm like, really? Like, it was that loud? It was loud, but I don't know if it was that loud. Come on, deafening? That's a little bit much there, A-Rod. But I'm very curious to see how BYU comes out in maybe those pre-scripted plays coming out of the bye. Because it's been a little bit of a mixed bag in bye weeks, coming off byes in the Big 12 era for BYU 2 years ago. Remember, they went to TCU off a bye, got hammered, lost 44-11. Last year off a bye, they had two of them, which they do this year as well. Arizona was a great game where they won 41. It was a blowout victory. And then last year, Utah, the offense struggled. So, I thought Keanu Tanavasa had a great point this week where he said, you win the next game out of a bye during that bye week. And, BYU said all the right things about their preparation for this matchup. And I think they are, I think that performance by East Carolina last week got BYU laser focused on this matchup, because sometimes I think, and I hate to even bring this up because I hate that's the whole, Power 4 group of 5. BYU used to be on the outside, and people would say, this isn't a great opponent, but we all knew BYU had a really good program. You can't just label it and say, it's group of 5, you're just going to waltz in and win a football game. You got to play at your best, because East Carolina's playing really confident football right now. So BYU better be locked in and prepared for this one if they want to come out with a victory.
Yeah, you think about that 22 season where they played. It's actually funny, you think about it. They played Stanford, who they played in their last game. They also played against East Carolina and had that 3-point loss there to them, 27-24. And Kalani has suffered 2 losses to this program in his tenure as BYU's head coach. Kalani's one of the few people as part of the BYU program who was here in 2017, who knows what it's like to come down to North Carolina. And really, we talked about this off the air, Mitch, but Kalani and his tenure in these East Coast trips and BYU's 500 record in these games, this is not going to be just like a walk in the park. BYU better come into the game tonight and be prepared for what they're going to face. Like, they can't come into this environment thinking that this is just going to be a 3-0 start. BYU is going to be able to walk over the Pirates. Like, that's not going to be how this game is going to play out if BYU is going to be victorious. BYU has to come in, and they're going to have to show that they were taking advantage of the bye week. They were preparing for a team that's really been able to throw the ball all over the field. I mean, their quarterback has almost 1,000 yards this season through the air, and so being able to really just hone in, lock in on their fundamentals, I think that'll be what leads BYU to victory tonight. If they are to be victorious, is they have to be a sound football team tonight and really block out the noise. Like you mentioned, the crowd noise getting pumped in at practice. Like this stadium is going to be pumped up for this game. Like this, we were walking around Greenville last night, like you mentioned earlier, and I don't think we saw hardly any BYU fans, which is funny because on our plane ride out here, it seemed like a third of the plane was BYU faithful. But yeah, I think that this crowd is going to be ready for the game tonight. ECU is going to be ready for the game tonight. Is BYU.
Let's listen in from BYU and East Carolina coaches coming up on the other side. We'll take our first break and this BYU football extended pregame coverage here on KSL News Radio. You'll hear from Kalani Sitake and ECU coach Blake Harrell next here on KSL News Radio.